Okay, we're going to start the meeting in a couple of minutes, please. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission special meeting Wednesday, October 18th, 2023 at 6:32. Determination of quorum. Mr. Kinney.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Reyes.
Here.
Mrs. Elderkin. Secretary Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Colunian.
Here.
Chairman Flynn is here. We have a full quorum of 9 tonight. Okay, emergency evacuation plan. Go out the doors you came in, left to right, front of the building and the back of the building. And if we could please stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, approval of minutes, September 13th, 2023, special meeting minutes. Make a motion. I have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Elderkin. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, old business for discussion. Before I start on the public informational meeting, does staff have anything to say?
Yes, just two quick updates to ensure as you enter into the deliberations of this next matter, we've got clarity on a couple of open-ended questions. One was at the last meeting, there was a discussion at the end briefly about the idea of the procedure for your ability to vote at a meeting. And working with the solicitor, we've looked into the code and he can verify or jump in as needed. Per Rhode Island General Law, Section 45-23-63, subsection D for votes. It is clarified that the decision of a planning board can be made on a project such as this with all the planning board members present at the time of the vote. Now, the key is that any members that were not here for any element of the hearing, you missed a meeting, then you just need to have, verified that you've reviewed the record of that meeting, that you're aware of the documents that took place, you're aware of the discussion that took place at that meeting. If you're in a position to verify that you're aware of those discussions and aware of those documents, then you're in a position to vote this evening. There was clarity because a zoning board would be in a different light. A zoning board, you would need to have been here for the entire course of meetings. So we discussed that. We saw the difference. The key differentiation being a planning board has that ability to review the record and vote tonight. So all members here are eligible to vote as long as you've reviewed the record in its entirety. That's one update. And the other one is that as it relates to a ratification process, as you'll see in the staff report, there's a staff recommendation, findings of fact and conditions that have been put on the record. And just for the sake of transparency for the public, the staff report with the recommendation is available on the town's website. You'll find it there and we've got it available. We'll put it on the screen tonight as well. This has been drafted as to represent a complete decision. All in one place, you've got your findings, you've got a recommendation, and you've got conditions. Now, be it that the board has a process in front of it to consider if that's an appropriate decision, but if you do consider it's appropriate, this is drafted so as that it would not require ratification if you feel that the decision is sufficient. If you need to change something and the changes are straightforward, we can hear those changes as conditions tonight. It would not require ratification. I bring this up in light of the fact that this application has been continued and we've had an extension from the applicant. That extension would end on October 20th. So if we're in a position where we would not wish to vote on this, or wish for a change that you would want to see in writing, then we'd need to ask for an extension, but this has been drafted so that you could move on this without a necessary ratification process. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to shoot them. I wanted you to be aware of those points before we started.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions before we start? Okay, we have a public informational meeting that's been continued since September 13th. Public comment is still open. It's comprehensive permit master plan, Coventry Crossings mixed-use development, John Cazella, William Eccleston Trust, E.T. A.L. and Elaine Eccleston Revocable Trust. Applicant Craig New Homes LLC, ADBA Craig Management, CO Jonathan Kent. Proposed mixed-use development consisting of 72 single-family and 35 two-family duplexes, 70 units total, equalizing 142 units, total of which 25% are deemable affordable, and an additional 12,500 square foot commercial use. AP 10, lot 29, AP 18, lot 86, zone, general business, special designation, R20, Hockney Hill Road. Anybody here representing the applicant? Sign up. Mr. Landry, name and address for the record, please.
William Landry, partner at Blish and Kavanaugh, 30 Exchange Terrace, Providence, Rhode Island. Mr. Landry, do a quick like that. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat that or?
May as well for the record.
Yes.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry. For the record, William Landry, Blish and Kavanaugh, 30 Exchange Terrace, Providence, Rhode Island. Just a couple of summary comments, Mr. Chair, if I may. We're not going to take a lot of your time tonight, but I think it's useful to go back to where we started and where we are at this point. You'll recall that initially the proposed density for this project was 168 residential units, including several multifamily buildings, fairly large buildings, and about 67,000 square feet of commercial space consisting of the soccer facility, recreation facility for multiple sports. That was a significant portion of the project. It was the developer of that project was actually referred to us by the town. They were looking for a piece of land, or a number of people in town that thought that was a good use. And there was a partnership, if you will, that there'd be a commercial use and a residential use. And that was an important planning part of the project. It actually accounted for almost a half of the purchase price for the property. But my client, heard what you said loud and clear and just canceled that entire relationship in order to remove the commercial element and make the impacts of this project more benign, particularly as regards traffic, which was a major concern of yours throughout this process, and is something that we've tried to pay a lot of attention to. We then made certain improvements to the project that resulted in less substantial intensity reductions, but nevertheless, they were in intensity reductions. We went down to from 168 units to 153 to 146 to now at 142. When we came here last month, we made the then most recent series of changes to a project that kept getting better as we modified it, mostly in response to requests or suggestions that were made by the board. And I think we've got a much better project to show for it. We reconfigured the road to pull it away further to the north from the abutters to try to moderate impacts to the abutting property owners. We further reduce the commercial element of the project. I mean, the project the site is a commercial zone and presently zoned and has been zoned for decades for one of the highest levels of commercial use in town. So we do have abutters that we respect and that we've heard that would like to have, even more controls on commercial use, but we're down to one 12,500 square foot pad site for the property. And I'll mention in a minute how we have proposed and are in agreement with certain suggestions in the staff report to try to make sure that whatever commercial is there is moderate in nature and isn't having a significant impact, particularly on traffic. We changed the road widths to 24 feet wide with sidewalks and provided for sidewalks on one side. We removed the islands in the cul-de-sacs. We added a visitor parking area and we've added what we think at least is an attractive wall feature that is, we agree, more consistent with the nature of the property as a gateway property. In terms of safety, very significantly, and in two different aspects have enhanced the pedestrian safety of the project, creating cohesive crossing pattern from the main entryway across Harkney Hill Road, just lining up more clearly how pedestrians would move through and across the site to other areas. And we've opened up the connection to the residential property to the rear of the proposed development as proposed. We proposed a central mailbox. That mailbox has been reconfigured and we think again improved again at the request of a board member to provide for easier access and for a full turnoff area for a vehicle and an adequate number of parking spaces associated with it. It's on the right side of the road for incoming traffic, and we think that's a better configuration. There was also some suggestion that could we put some type of sidewalk along the Harkney Hill Road frontage of the property. And there are some limitations to that. We're dealing with DOT. The road is only so wide. We didn't count that out, only agreed to try to work with DOT as the project progresses to try to add that feature. But since then, we took another look at it and actually added a sidewalk feature from the north end of the project to the south end of the project, almost completely all the way north to south, with an internal sidewalk fairly close to Harkney Hill Road, but one that would clearly provide for safer movement of pedestrians associated with the development. It's on our property, so we didn't have to ask DOT to permit that feature. We do know that with the interconnectivity of the residential neighborhood behind us, that would obviously be of use to them. And it's not the type of sidewalk that someone would exclude members of the public from utilizing to pass through that area. It would invite that type of passage, but it will be on private property and is not something that the town has to maintain moving forward. So we think that's a good new feature as well. With respect to traffic, it's for the past several months, we've been in good shape on that issue, largely as a result of eliminating the commercial element, but also having two good sets of traffic engineers. When that happens, one for the town, one for the applicant, it usually turns out that they're not that far off, and their collaborative peer review process resulted in an opinion from PAR Engineering to the town that there won't be adverse traffic impacts associated with this development. We had a verbal to that effect back in August, September timeframe, and they've submitted a more recent supplemental letter to that effect during the first week of October. The landscaping had come up quite a bit. You know, the site looked pretty bare from the street, but that's because the landscaping plan was not required until later stages of development. Once we have the actual project concept locked down, we have since developed and submitted a landscaping plan that shows a very robust buffering along the streetscapes and tasteful plantings throughout the development. It's a good, healthy buffering system that's been provided. It's not the final word. Landscaping usually is an issue for the preliminary and final stages of review, so we'll continue to work at that. One board member requested or that we consider certain types of plantings to add a little bit of color. That was well heard and will be taken into consideration along with, you know, whatever other comments may emerge at the future stages of review. With respect to the intensity of potential intensity of the one commercial use that we have, we did go through the permitted uses in the zone and indicated that as to drive-through uses, we said we'd have no bars or anything along those lines. Those would be anything like that that would be a nuisance for the neighborhood. We don't want it any more than the town wants it. We did suggest that with respect to drive-through type uses or uses that may be more significant traffic generators, that we would have to come back to the board moving forward to have such uses on our one commercial pad. We note that the staff report deals with that issue as well, probably in a better way, in that it's hard procedurally for the town to require someone to come back for future approvals after a final approval has been given. I mean, we agreed that that could be a condition to any approval, and we have no problem doing it, but legally that may be a little tricky to get through a final approval process and then have a mechanism where it's opened up again to permit certain types of things as opposed to modifying the development. The staff report suggests that we deal with this at the preliminary plan stage, whereby if there are going to be certain types of uses allowed, we would have to satisfy the board through further detailed traffic studies with respect to those uses, that there would not result any significant increase in traffic from those uses. So you'd be reviewing those uses with a use-specific traffic report in hand to be able to evaluate those impacts while you still have control of the project before the final stage of review. And unless you approve those uses would not be allowed in the development going forward post-approval. And those uses include a restaurant or fast food restaurant, supermarket, convenience store, pharmacy, drugstore, marijuana dispensary, a liquor store, or a coffee or donut shop. The higher traffic generators, these are permitted uses or special use permit uses within this district to begin with. So it's not about the use, it's more about the traffic and whether that would change anything in the favorable traffic analysis that's been done by both engineers. We've reviewed the staff report. The proposed findings are what we would expect and we think are consistent with the record. The proposed conditions, 7 conditions, are also acceptable to the applicant. With the caveat that the fair share development fees, we would request that the board consider waiving those with respect to the low and moderate income units. That's a different type of owner. Most municipalities do have an exemption from impact fees for deed restricted affordable units that help a municipality get to the 10% goal.
Excuse me,
It-
Mr. Landry. I do believe only the council can waive the fees.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I
Chair.
believe that only the council can waive the fees. This wouldn't be something the board could do.
That
In the past, we could, but we can't now.
yeah, that may be true. There's some conflicting cases on that, but I hear you. If it's a question of being concerned about your ability to waive the fees, that's understood, and we'll take it to the council. I did notice that the ordinance doesn't automatically exempt them, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, but that's the way it is right now in Coventry. Okay. So I think that's all I have, unless there are any questions of me.
Any questions for the board, for the applicant? Hmm? If you have any questions for the applicant. Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
On our first meeting, I wanted, some, stormwater protection for the residents in that border area where it's flooding. You have a lot of them near the roads, but there's nothing in that area. That's where the wetlands are.
I'm having trouble hearing. It's not your fault,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
mine. I've actually got a head cold, but if you could ask me that question again.
Where the flooding is, when we went out to the site walk, I noticed where the water settles and the residents told me their house is flooded, this house floods, this
Yes,
house
yes.
floods. The first meeting, I said I wanted to protect the residents from
Yes.
flooding. To get a retention pond or whatever we gotta do over there.
Right.
You put a lot of them near the street, but you never put nothing in between. That's on, in between the homes, the old homes and the new homes. You have the buffer, but nothing to catch that water from going into their homes.
Well, I don't know about the water going into the homes, but I can tell you this, that at the preliminary plan stage, we're gonna have to show you an engineered plan for stormwater control on this property. Right now, there is none, okay? We have to design and have DEM approval of a stormwater design that takes into consideration not just the existing conditions, but all the rooftop impervious, all of the paved areas, and convince DEM that water will be retained on site or otherwise managed without leaving the site. Okay, and it has to be managed on site without an increase in intensity or volume. So that's a design standard that we'll have to follow. These areas that have had issues with water in the basement, those developments were built before they had these kinds of standards right now. And if we can't prove to DEM at the engineering stage of this project that we're not going to exacerbate the existing conditions, this project either won't proceed to preliminary or it will proceed to preliminary on fewer units so that those stormwater controls could be added.
But
So
right now, you have 1, 2 on here, on the map I have received. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up against the road. 2 in the middle of between the 2 buildings and 1 behind the, I think this is gonna be whatever it's gonna be here. Nothing between, you have the border all the way around, but nothing up against that border. Something to catch the water going in there. And I was the first person to bring that up, and that's why I
Yep.
wanted to protect the residents. And there's nothing there. I just want.
well, if the stormwater system hasn't been designed yet, what you're looking at is a concept. That's not our stormwater management control. Mr. Hemingway may have something more to add to that, Sam.
So, Mr. Reyes, this is a conceptual plan. So
Yes.
engineering really is gonna get more involved in the next stage, if in fact it gets to the next stage of preliminary.
I just didn't see it on here. I see ones all around it, but not where I asked for.
But that can all change in preliminary. Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Sam Hemingway. I'm an engineer with the firm of Garofalo and Associates doing business out of Providence. Yeah, I'm not sure how far you want to go with that. I will reiterate is that we have done some initial calculations to indicate the total volume and the extent of facilities that we anticipate. We have reviewed the projected grading and the direction of flow from the site. The main reason that the facilities are not cited in that location is because although runoff does accumulate there, it actually ultimately discharges towards the east or southeast of that location. And so we're trying to our intent is to direct runoff away from that area and mitigate it farther from the point where they're having problems so that they don't exacerbate the problems.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I just wanted to. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on one thing. Are marijuana dispensaries allowed in Coventry? I thought they banned them altogether. I'm just,
Now, I don't claim to be an expert on our code based on my time here. You may be correct. I added that in there largely because if the code changes, who knows? But I added it in there because that was what I was gathering as the advice from the peer reviewer of a traffic intensive use that we should just include in our list of uses that wouldn't be
Okay.
allowed. So you may be correct,
Yeah.
Mr. Clunian.
I have a couple of thoughts on some of these conditions. I'm not going to bring them up now. But relative to the restrictions that are there, and I know it talks about restrictions, that would be conditions for approval tonight if we were to vote on this, but I also want to throw out there, there may be a possibility of incorporating maybe some other restrictions on uses that would be in the condominium documents, because my concern primarily would be not that we don't have these types of things along Route 3 and those types of analysis which are typically required, but it's for the residents that would ultimately move into these units, that then if the commercial property came along later and the developer was out of it, and then something like this came in there, I want them to be protected. So I'll elaborate a little further. My thoughts are still being gathered, but as far as protections, for dumpsters and the types of uses to make sure they're not dealing with a nuisance abutting their property, that was my only comment.
Yeah, we could incorporate any conditions like that into you could make it a condition of approval that any restrictions that are here would also have to be in the condo documents and run with the land.
Correct. That's what I was looking
Plus for clarification, throughout various areas in the staff report, they do mention rentals. I just want to make sure that that's taken out and replaced with units, but we will put that in a motion if it gets to a motion tonight.
Okay, could you say that again, Mr. Chair? It does.
So a
mention
lot of, throughout the director's report, it says rentals
rentals.
instead of units. I just wanted for
Yeah.
clarification. Because it is in the staff report.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, public hearing is open. We're gonna start on the left side here. Mr. Landry will be taking notes. Come on up, sir. Name and address, please, for the record.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Paul Ruggieri, 66 Wood Cove Drive. Thank you for the opportunity. This will be the third time that I've gotten up and spoken. I try not to repeat what I've said in the past. I've been living in Coventry about 44 years now in Wood Estates. And one of my concerns is all the sirens that are going off. Every day we hear sirens either going through the neighborhood or down Route 3. And it's very alarming. I think a lot of this as a result of what's happened with COVID. People either getting sick from it or getting vaccinated, and then that's caused some problems. So there's been a lot of illnesses and unfortunately deaths. And you probably all know people that are fallen into those categories. It was alarming to find out that the Central Coventry Fire District, which is responsible for all of Wood Estates and North Wood Estates and in the field, how are they going to do this? You know, my request would be to delay a decision on this. You know, the federal government, a lot of people are saying the federal government is collapsing in this country. People don't want to hear that, but it's a reality. It's the federal government corporation that was changed back in 1781. So this corporation is not representing the people. Our officials are not doing that. So any decisions on this will be impacted by that, by the very rise and increase of everything that we want to buy. You know, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's products to build homes and so on. It's a major concern. So that's one thing where I would prefer that this get pushed out and delay any decision until the springtime. That's number one, because they're talking about having another shutdown, requiring people to have masks and get shots and so on. It's a bad time to be trying to build an additional community here. That's one thing. The second is if Cody has the authority to put up a photo. I'm sorry? Oh, it hasn't. Okay. I very late. I gave Cody some photos that I wanted to have put up, but if you're all familiar with Route 3 and Leisure Way, that leads into a development of homes that are fairly close together. It's a beautiful stone wall, which I think is a much better buffer than trying to put bushes and flowers and things like that. You know, I walk a lot in the neighborhood, and when I go down Circlewood or I go down the lower end of Wood Cove, I hear traffic 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. When I'm using my flashlight to walk, they're out there early and they're out there all day. A wall, and I've gone by a couple of these developments on, let's say, I think New London Turnpike in East Greenwich, and another one on, I don't know if it's Arnold Road. There's another road that put up a development, and they put up the stone walls. And if we're calling this, I don't know, the gateway to Coventry, as was referred to it, and Coventry Crossings, it doesn't present a very good image unless we were complementary with the wall on Leisure Way, which runs.
If I can interrupt you,
Which
they
runs up-
have a stone wall on the plan. They've added a stone wall on the plan.
That's great.
Yeah.
I hope it's similar to what's right across the street from where this development is.
Looks very nice to me. It's my opinion only, but
Yeah.
I happen to agree. That's why the developer listened to us
Yeah.
and the residents,
That's great.
and we have a stone wall.
Yeah, if it can be similar, to what is across the street and match it some, that would really look nice coming into this area. So I've already given my other objections and so on. The last one is if there's a way of removing the commercial piece of it. We don't need a commercial piece right next to a high density area with 142 units. And, you know, it just doesn't make any sense to put one there. We have on Tyoke Ave, we have a lot of vacant strip malls, you know, that are just not occupied. So it seems silly to put it there. You know, turn that area into a little park for the people that live right in that development. So thank you for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Come on up, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Marion Levake, 7 Gentry Farms Drive in Coventry. Levake, yeah. My question is, who's maintaining the homeowners association? Who's doing that?
Can you
Who's
just
maintaining?
address to the board? He's gonna write
Right,
down.
who's maintaining the homeowners association for them?
He's gonna answer that.
Okay.
As he's gonna
Because that
answer
can
all
be-
questions at once.
Okay, because that can be challenging. I'm in an association
Yeah.
and sometimes it gets expensive as the expenses go up. And it is something that you have to be at a certain income to afford. So, because with an association, it can start off at $40 of homeowners per month, but that can easily go up. And how is low income going to be able to afford that? And then if there are residents within that community fall back on paying that homeowners association, is now their garbage not going to be picked up? So I have a big concern. I live in a homeowners association. I've been there 25 years. It's a mess, and it's only 20 homes right now. And it's only gone up to 60 a month, and it's still a mess. So I can't imagine, my question would be who's maintaining it? Because when it's just a resident, a homeowner, when like if they have their own board, that can be complicated. Then if they have a management, then there's added expense for that. So it's not just cut and dry with a homeowners association.
Hmm.
So I would just ask.
I
that you
think I
look
know
into
the
that.
answer, but I'm gonna let
Okay.
them answer it.
And you do know the answer if a low income resident falls back
They're
on
gonna
that.
address that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Anybody else on this side? Come on up. I'm gonna take her first and you come right up after. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tammy Christensen Messier. I live at 13 Wisteria Drive, Coventry, Rhode Island. And I just wanted to make some comments regarding the problem the school system is going to have to handle with this many more residents. And especially just to quote some data, 1 in 6 children is learning disabled. And 1 in 10 has allergies, ADHD, or anxiety disorders. 1 in 13 develops autism. And 1 in 150 has epilepsy. And 1 in 285 is diabetic. So if we're charged $20,000 a year to educate a student in this city or town, then those rates and, of those people coming in, and these numbers are just going, down. So it's not 1 in 6, probably in 2 years, it's going to be 1 in 5 that's going to have, depression or anxiety and anything. So it's going to cost us more than the base amount to train or to educate these kids in the school system. And that has to be taken into consideration, especially if some of the children end up in a year program, not in just an academic year of education. So you might be making money on, the taxes or whatever, but we have to hire 5, 10, 15 new educators, special educators, not just regular educators. And so I just want that on the record, that really needs to be considered, that kind of ends up just sloughing off. And I don't know if those numbers in that thing had been considered when you're taking in your proposal, but it does take and increase the burden on the school system that we already have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Come on up. You all set? Anybody else on this side? Anybody on this side like to come up and speak? Come on up, Senator. Name and
Leo
address, please.
Leo Raptakis, 2080 Newsnack Hill Road. I just looked at page 10, the first section, I believe it's number 6. It says the proposal will have adequate and permanent physical access to a public street on both Newsnack Hill Road and Harkney Hill Road. I just looked at the plans in the back, so I see one egress exit on Harkney Hill Road and one, I believe it's on Newsnack Hill Road at the corner near Route 3, where the Dollar General, I believe, is, toward that vicinity. What happens if I know it's not up to the planning board to make the decision of the entrances and egresses, it will be up to the Department of Transportation. What happens if the Department of Transportation rejects the Harkney Hill Road access, entrance, or coming out of the project? I've been against the entrance and coming out of Harkney Hill Road, coming out of the project onto Harkney Hill Road, because we spent many years trying to make that area a lot safer, especially for the traffic coming out of Hill Farm Road. So that's my concern. I know the Planning Commission doesn't have a yes or no because it is a state road. It's not a town road. So my question would be to Mr. Landry, what happens if DOT rejects the Harkney Hill Road exit or entrance, do they propose a second entrance on New Snake Hill Road? I just don't want to see another exit onto Hill Farm Road, which we don't see this evening. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on this side of the room like to come up? Come on.
Judy Quinlan, 22 Wood Cove Drive, Coventry. I've asked this a couple of times and I still haven't gotten any answer. Okay. I've asked it a couple of times and still haven't gotten any answer. The 40-foot buffer, which will run behind my house as well as many others, what is that going to consist of? I see a lot of pretty trees and so on the plans, but all it says there is just a tree line. Are there going to be trees? Are there going to be bushes? Is it going to be a fence? That's my concern. Thank
We'll let
you.
the applicant address that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Seeing none? Anybody on Zoom like to make a comment? Put your hands up if there's anybody on Zoom. All right, bring them in, Cody. Sue? Are you there, Sue?
Address 60 Hill Street. I talk about the other number, and my question is why
We can't
is
hear-
the
Sue,
sewer
we
going
can't
up
hear you.
to
We're having a
three
little
to
bit
the
of
main
issue.
sewer line?
We didn't really hear you. Could you repeat that, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is about the
Name and ad,
sewerage.
excuse me.
Can you hear
Name and
me?
address, please. Name and address for the record.
62 Mills.
We believe you're on mute.
It's Reynolds Street in Coventry.
We have Sue Reynolds, but nothing after that. We didn't get your address.
Clark Mill Street. It's 62 Clark Mill Street.
62 Clark Mill Street.
Clark Mill Street in Coventry. Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
My question is, really the sewage was said to be going through the other development of Ramblewood, and why we aren't directing it on the main sewer line on Route 3.
We don't have a sewer line on Route 3 that goes down that far. We have the sewer line across the street from the project at Leisha Village that the developer wants to use, but we won't get any more information on that until preliminary plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else on Zoom, put their hands up, please. Mr. Landry, could you come up and answer those questions if possible?
Okay, the first one had to do with the homeowners association. As part of the final approval stage of this project, we'll have to submit the actual condominium declaration. Mr. Igliozzi will review it, make sure it has all the proper provisions and follows all of the town conditions. But it'll provide that every member, everyone who buys a lot in the development will automatically become a member of the homeowners association. There will be an executive board. The executive board will be elected by the owners, but they will be involved in establishing the condominium fees. We don't know exactly what those fees will be, but they will be the same type of fees that all of the other condo associations in the town now will typically pay. The condo association is not a money-making proposition. There's no profit there. There's no desire to charge any more or less than is required to provide services to the homeowners that are not provided by the town. So I can't guarantee the person who had concerns that the fees will be what everybody would like them to be, but there's nothing different about this development than other condominiums in town. The market will set the price for the houses. The actual cost of services allocated between a high number of owners, which usually helps keep them down, will be a function of what it takes to get the services and make sure that they're there. I can tell you that lenders and Rhode Island Housing, when the monitoring agent for the affordable units certifies the qualifications of the buyer, they require that condominium fees be taken into consideration. So if somebody's buying a unit here, it's not going to be a surprise to them what the condo fees are from time to time. And the issue of affordability will be, addressed in the normal course with the lender and in the case of the affordable units, the monitoring agent. And if a buyer is not capable of purchasing and handling the mortgage and the condo fees without spending not more than, I think it's 30% of their income on housing, then they're not going to qualify to be able to purchase the property. So it's all I can say about the condo fees. The fiscal impacts we've addressed this issue several times. The fiscal impacts are not a criteria for approval or denial of a lower or moderate income housing projects. We did present a favorable fiscal impact analysis by Mr. Lombardo in one of the early stages that showed a net positive fiscal impact as a result of the project. Mr. Lombardo was available for questioning. That report's been out for some time, but fiscal impacts are, when you're talking about residential developments, they are what they are. And the idea of trying to get higher density in accordance with the comp plan is not to discriminate against families. And this project with 1 and 2 bedroom units is not a big generator of school children the way that other residential developments would be expected to be. Senator Raptakis asked about what happens if DOT disapproves the master plan that you have in terms of access. That is a master plan. That's a concept plan. We have to take that through preliminary. And by the final plan stage, we have to produce for you a physical alteration permit from the state that confirms that the state has analyzed the traffic patterns and the access and egress points and approve them. If the state rejects our proposal, we're not going to get a final approval from this board without providing an alternative access arrangement that's acceptable to the state. And so this project doesn't start getting built after this master plan stage is decided. This is just the beginning of a more intense process of engineering and state approvals. And we can't change this master plan without you being involved in that. So if we run into difficulties with some DEM or DOT, whatever it might be at preliminary and final, it's something that makes it impractical or impossible for us to carry out the plan that's been approved at master plan. We've got to do a different plan, and that has to come right back to you in additional public hearings. I think that was,
Just, one person wanted to know about the buffer, but before we get to the buffer,
Yeah.
somebody wanted to know how can does the affordable housing units pay the same monthly fee as the rest of the units?
we haven't made that decision yet. I've seen it done both ways, and I've seen it criticized for both ways. So I'm not sure there's a right answer to this. There's some people that think that it's unfair for the affordable units to have a discounted fee because everyone's getting the same services. There's another school of thought that wants the affordable units to get a lower condominium fee because they're paying less for the homes, and the homes are worth a little less. I don't know if the board has a preference for that. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. But I think we're going to try to do it in the fairest way that we can. We also have to sell these affordable units. And if the condo fees end up being too high to be able to allow the residents to pay their mortgages and not be paying more than that maximum amount of their monthly income, then we're going to have to do something about the condo fees for the affordable units. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I can tell you that most of the developments that I've seen in recent years have not had a separate condo fee for the affordable units. That I'm not saying that that's the way it has to be, but that's the typical arrangement in every municipality now.
Thanks.
The buffer is a 60-foot setback, a 60-foot setback from adjoining development. And 40 feet of that would be a no-cut buffer that would be maintained in its natural condition. We did have the issue raised that at least one of the homeowners, I think it's the gentleman whose house is in the area of that man-made drainage structure, that it was fairly thin in that area, and that a 40-foot buffer may not be adequate for that owner. And we did address that. Mr. Hemingway spoke to it specifically at the last minute, where the existing buffer would be supplemented to try to assist that particular abutter with a vegetative screening. And we'll have to address that as we get to the final and preliminary plan stages, as the landscaping plan matures. And we can take a look at whether the existing buffer is just too thin to be an effective buffer in certain areas. But it's really been envisioned as a no-cut buffer at this point, but recognizing that landscaping is usually something that comes at the next stage of review.
So going back to the Rhode Island housing piece, is it possible for the condominium fees to be included in those so not in their actual mortgage, but just like you can do your taxes, if you wanted to have an accrual account with your mortgage company, is that something that's allowable with condominium fees or no? If you don't know the answer, I'm sorry. It was just a thought that popped in my head.
I guess it could be set up however we want it. You'd rather have it not be part of the mortgage payment?
No, I'm actually thinking if it were part of the mortgage payment, it would actually make it easier for the low income to actually pay it, because then they would know what their payment is it's all coming out however they pay their mortgage.
You know, I think that's gonna have to be something that the individual owners work out with their
With their
lenders.
mortgage.
I know it works that way with taxes often as well. The taxes are included with the mortgage payment, but I'm not sure we're gonna be able to control that for our buyers.
Okay.
We don't have that level of control over how they organize and pay their finances.
No, I understand that, but I didn't know if it was something that could even happen. So I guess basically what I was trying to figure out is if it was an allowable thing. And how does Rhode Island Housing work with condominium fees and things like that? Because I do know they have restrictions on those fees, what is applicable, how much is allowed, things like that. How is that going to play into what you're planning on doing?
Well, when we presented a financial pro forma for this project, I don't recall what the fee is. It was probably 200 something, 250. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but we had to conceptually project what the fee might be if the development was commenced now. And they look at that and determine whether that seems to make sense. But the more important thing is what is the situation at the time the units sold? At that time, a monitoring agent that we have to have a contract with, we proposed the monitoring agent in our application. The board's going to have to approve that monitoring agent. But the monitoring agent has to work with each buyer to make sure that the buyer qualifies for a mortgage, can pay the lower price for that unit that we're required to observe, and also can pay the condo fees. And that's a very important part of their calculation. So that's done through a natural vetting process of buyers to try to make sure they're qualified. This is not low income housing. It's moderate income housing. These are people that work generally. These are people who have to qualify for mortgages and have good credit. Could be retired people, but there's a process that's similar to what everybody has to do to make sure that they're the right fit for the product that's being offered. So we won't be handling that. Rhode Island, the way this Low and Moderate Income Housing Act is set up, they don't leave it up to the developer to work hand in hand with the buyers on those kinds of issues. They require that a monitoring agent do that, and there's only 7 or 8 monitoring agents in the state that are approved to do this because they have to follow Rhode Island housing standards, and they usually have a great deal of experience working with home buyers, first-time home buyers, to really understand the whole process. So, you know, the people that you and I are most concerned about, the ones who may not be able to afford the houses, they're the ones that this system has been set up to try to protect. That's what I can tell you.
Okay, I appreciate you taking your time to explain that. Thank you.
Could I just, if you don't mind, Mr. Landry, I just want to get a couple of clarifications. For example, I know this woman asked about the buffer, and I think you answered the question, but the answer was there's a 40-foot buffer shown on the plans, which is basically the existing vegetation, which right now is a no-cut buffer. And if it's deemed at the preliminary stage that additional screening is needed, that will be addressed then.
That's correct.
Okay. On the condo docs, and I know this young lady over here brought something up on homeowners association. This would not, and again, I don't know what homeowners association she was referring to, but this is a condominium.
Correct.
And in a condominium, you're required to provide the documents to every buyer, and they have 10 days to review those documents. And that includes the budget and the condo fees. Unlike what I believe is the case, and I could be mistaken, a typical homeowners association that buys into a 20-lot subdivision that has restrictions and open space to be managed, there isn't a requirement that they have 10 days to review the documents. There isn't a known fee that they're going to incur to maintain those open spaces and insurance. So there are protections that are in place for the buyers.
Absolutely. It's a public offering statement. It's almost like a
Correct.
security.
Right. Right.
prospectus.
Right. So this actually, there's more transparency in buying into a
Very much so.
condominium association than a homeowners
Absolutely.
association. And then I just want to go back because I was the one that brought it up originally. I did see another condominium declaration that was filed, and the low to moderate income units were given lower fees. The units were typically the same size. They were going to get the same benefits. And I understand there's two schools of thought. But if the condominium fee is less, that means that buyer that can supposedly use 30% of their income to buy one of these units. If the condo fee is less than the market rate units, that's that much more money that the developer can charge for the unit. Because all Rhode Island Housing cares about is the 30% of their income is the maximum payment they can make to qualify. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I was in favor of the condominium fees being uniform across the board.
Right.
And the person that unfortunately takes it on the chin out of the gate is the builder of the house, as
Yeah.
opposed to the rest of the homeowners association that are going to have to make up the difference for the rest of the time they live and have to
Right.
pay those fees. So, and the only other thing, I don't recall, I don't have the report in front of me, but it goes to one of the first comments that we got. Was there an estimate on how many school children, the 2-bed, 2-bath, or these two-family
There
units are going to
was,
generate?
there was, and I, because it was because they were 1 and 2 bedroom houses, I think his projection was 5 school children per 100 units. And he has this litany of other projects all over the
Correct.
state that he keeps track of
Correct.
to see how many kids.
So it's safe to say that he's not anticipating there would be even 20 school children out of the 142 units. And it would be significantly less than if this was a traditional subdivision, even if there were 50 homes built.
Absolutely.
That's,
Big
That's-
difference.
I
Big
thought
difference
that-
from the neighboring subdivision.
yeah, I don't have the report. I thumbed through, it was presented a few meetings ago and I didn't bring it with me tonight, but I just didn't know if you recalled. But I didn't realize it was that low either, but
Yeah,
that's
it's
why I'll
pretty-
use.
and nobody believes it, but that's what the statistics keep showing, right up to very recently approved and built subdivisions everywhere in the state.
Yeah, what I'm noticing is even the 3-bed units, the parents are only having 1 or 2 children. I mean, it's not like the old days, so. Okay, that's all I have for, thank you.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I mean, with my experience of the amount of compliments we've done here, I don't see, and I'm gonna throw it out, my opinion only. 1 bedrooms are not gonna have any kids. 2 bedrooms are not every unit with 2 bedrooms is gonna have a kid in that. I think somewhere in the 15 to 20 bracket also. I think
Could well
that's a
be.
pretty good estimate. I know people are shaking their heads, but kids do not go into those units.
Yeah.
It's a transition unit mainly for people my age that want to go into condos and have no maintenance.
Absolutely.
And that's my experience.
There's too many
Get on the point.
restrictions for kids. You can't have a swing set in the yard, you can't
Right.
have a basketball
No,
court.
it's not, it's a different buyer, at a different. in a different
Absolutely.
Season
Okay.
of their life. Sometimes it's.
You can
a
come
young
out.
Couple that's,
Public open still.
that's
It's
a
public
first
still.
time home buyer or 2 people that are living together. There's a lot of variations, but I keep seeing, every project I have, everyone estimates 3 times as many school children. But the statistics keep showing in every Rhode Island community, if you build it, they will come. And what's being built here is as low impact on a fiscal system as it gets for housing.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? Anybody else in the audience would like to come up before I close public hearing? Come on up, Mr. Evans. Name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John C. Revens, Junior Revens, St. Pierre and Wiley, 946 Senegal Road in Warwick. At the first hearing, Mr. Chairman, I put on the record the names of the people in the community who I represent with regard to the application. And I'd just like to make a few comments on their behalf. Like the people here tonight, there's not unanimity among them as to every aspect of this plan. But I'm here to say that the overwhelming majority of the people that I represent are very pleased with the changes that have been made in the plan. They're pleased that the soccer facility is no longer part of the application. They're pleased that the retail portion has been cut down to 12,500 square feet. They're pleased that all of the residential units will either be single-family homes or duplex homes. They're pleased that the road was moved away from the houses, so the people on the north side didn't have the street that was in front of their house and then have another street that was in their backyard with no separation. They're pleased about that. They're pleased about the 40-foot no-cut buffer. And when we come back for a preliminary hearing, assuming the applicant receives all of their state permits, we would like to be sure that that no-cut buffer has restrictions that are enforceable by the town, that it will remain a no-cut buffer. We want to be sure that there's proper permanent signage along that border of the buffer on both sides, that it's a no-cut buffer. And we'd like to see some enhancement of the plantings in that area, both for evergreens, deciduous trees, and some flowering plants, so that it looks attractive to the people who are moving in there as well as the people in the community. And with that said, we leave the rest of the terms and conditions of this application to your good judgment. And we appreciate your assistance in getting to this result. And we also appreciate the efforts of the applicant to listen to the comments that were made by the people in the community and modify the plan. So we appreciate that, and we thank you for your time and attention tonight, but not just tonight. You've been through a lot of hearings on this, and it's been a lot of hard work for all of you, and we appreciate the efforts that you've made and the consideration that you've given. It's been very balanced and very fair. We just wanted to thank you and the planning staff for that.
And thank you. And I'd like to thank the developer for listening and for the people to bringing it to our attention.
It works both ways. So the
Yes.
applicant has been reasonable in making changes to the plan, and I think it's a much better plan as it relates to the residential community that surrounds it. So we appreciate all your efforts, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Come on up. Name and address, please.
Bake 7 Gentry Farms Drive in Coventry. So I mean, not to bring up the whole association, just so you understand completely, I've been living it for 25 years. It's deceitful to say that it can't default, because it can default. People can default easily. You don't have to get approved through your mortgage in order to get into that unit. The bank doesn't care there's an association there or a condo fee there. The bank only cares, can you pay your mortgage? So the question I asked was, if people default on paying their condo fee, does that mean their trash isn't going to get picked up? Is that, what do they have for a backup for if they don't pay for their condo fee?
The bank does care because the condominium association can actually auction the unit off for the unpaid fees.
They auction it, or do they put a lien on the property?
They could start with a lien, but if they wanted to, they can foreclose.
Most likely it's going to be a lien, and it could go years, correct?
Whether there is or there isn't, that's up to the condo association.
And when you have an association that's made up of just the residents, it's even worse. And most likely there'll be liens, and then, quite frankly, then that garbage doesn't get picked up. I'm just saying, I've been living it.
This is not a homeowners association.
Do you
This
have
is
a condo-
This
do you-
is a condominium.
Do you have a
association.
condominium fees for 142 units in town of Coventry? Have you had that recently? 142 units?
God, yeah.
We don't have one.
Crompton.
Crompton has 80 units. We have many units on Hopkins Hill Road.
But so have you had a development where there's 142 units?
So as the developer stated, the more units, the fees are actually less.
Not necessarily. As time goes on and crises happen, people, economical, whatever, things, you can't look at the
Well, if
future
you
and
have
say,
a good board like Hopkins Hill on Heights,
Yeah,
they
we-
have condo
well,
fees.
how long have they
I can
been in
finish,
association for?
Condo fees have over 20 years have not gone up. They're still $275 a month.
275 a month, 200, well, mine's 60.
Well,
A month.
Because you
yours
have a
are not
home
high enough. That's why
association.
the
We
roads
have,
are bad.
no,
So-
we,
So does a condo fee include insurance on the road? So if someone gets in a car accident on that road, what happens then?
they haven't finished their declaration. I'm not gonna debate. I'm not an attorney, but a condominium association is different from a homeowners association like in Gentry Farm. You own your lot. You can do whatever you want with it. They cannot.
I
They're-
can't do whatever I want on my lot. So you don't understand what I'm paying and what I'm in. We have restrictions on our lot too. We can't put up extra sheds. We have to maintain our property to look a certain way. You're not part of my association, so you can't dictate what I
I've been part
have.
of an association. I've managed condominium associations and I owned a condominium.
Okay, but you
And I
don't have mine.
foreclosed and I've liened.
But you don't have mine.
No, I don't.
All
Well,
right,
that's
so
what I
you
mean
can't
to
debate
say
what I
that-
have over
no,
what
and
you
I'm
have.
not going to debate.
So the question I had was,
But this
if
is
they,
hypothetical.
all right, so the
I
question
can't
I had
answer a
was-
hypothetical
so if they
question.
don't pay on their condo fee, we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know trash is gonna build up. We don't know what's gonna happen on 142 units.
We don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the left or the right? Come on up. Name and address, please.
Robin Lawrence, 2010 Nooseneck Hill Road, right in the thick of it. So last Friday, I also got a letter about another project on the other side of Dollar General. Next week, we'll all be here for that, for landscaping, 5-acre landscaping. So now we have this 144 unit roads, cars added that supposedly it's not going to affect traffic, but then you're going to open this landscaping business on the other side of Dollar General. Last night, we had a great 5-car smash up right at the intersection. So these projects are going on at the same time. So now you're going to have more traffic issues. Already see a lot of accidents there anyway. Most days, I can't get across the street out of my driveway. I have to take a right, go through the bank and cross at the light. I just wondered if any of that was going to be taken. They're separate projects, but it's still going to add to the traffic. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be back.
Anybody else? Come on up, sir.
Roger Leclerc, 8 Maple Root Road. I'm just following up on what she's saying, and she's absolutely right. On the corner of Maple Root Road and Hockney Hill Road, like she said, with the meeting next week. ProScape Landscaping, they were proposing, let's see here, a 9,000 square foot commercial building. There's going to be parking area for their employees, which is going to be about 30 cars. From what we understand right now, I'm not sure if their road is going to come out. I've talked to a couple of people who've been in that, who are involved with that development, I guess, if you want to call it that. And they had mentioned that the employees were going to enter in from Hockney Hill Road, where the proposed entrance is for this, for the crossing. Nothing is supposed to come in from Maple Root Road. Thank God for us on Maple Root Road, because we're a dead end road, as you well know. From what I understand, they want to do a fencing there, but they've already cleared that land up. And when they say they do buffers, you're absolutely right. They do buffers. But when that stuff is thin, you can see right across. So all my neighbors along that property line can see right across Nooseneck Hill Road. Granted, they probably will do a fence. That's what they're saying. Hopefully they do. But we've lost all the woods there because they stripped that land down also. And when you decide to put up a 9,000 square foot steel building with 3 stalls plus an office area, that's a lot of activity. And like she said, coming out Hockney Hill onto Nooseneck at that light, Dollar General's, the problem is cars are cutting through Dollar General now to cut because they want to avoid the light. And like she said also, there was a bad accident there, and there's been multiple bad accidents there. So their traffic study, I don't know what kind of study they did, but I don't know if they were aware that activity there on Nooseneck Hill Road in that whole corner is going to increase tenfold, because they eventually, from what I understand, it's going to be materials, shrubs, plants, who knows? So,
We can't comment on that project because we haven't heard it yet.
no,
So we did do a site walk over there,
right,
but that's,
citizen meeting, yeah.
so, I mean, next week we'll address all those concerns on
Okay.
when the applicant comes in front of us, but we can't talk about that. It hasn't come in
Okay,
front of
but I'm
us.
just saying that there is a lot of activity that's going to be going around that corner. And especially for the ones who, like myself and a few others who live on Maple Root Road, you know, we have limited access. That's our way out. And if they do that the entrance for the crossing right there, it's going to be, so, but that's it.
But
Thank you so much. And thanks
Thank you.
for everything you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Left or right side? Come on up, sir.
Donald Hall, 102 Wisteria Drive, Coventry. Also, Hall, yes, Hall, 102 Wisteria. I'm also retired deputy fire chief for Western Coventry Fire. And I think another traffic study should be done. Recently, over the last week, coming out of Wisteria Drive onto Hill Farm Road, I have had to wait actually 5 minutes from cars coming down Hill Farm Road to get onto Nooseneck Hill. When I finally am able to make the left and go up the Nooseneck Hill Road, I looked back to my right and I could see bumper to bumper traffic from Hill Farm Road all the way down almost to the bend in the road. And this has happened several times. I applaud the developer for, making the 22-foot lots in the project to 24 feet. That'd give fire apparatus a little bit more room. But I think another traffic study should be done because there is no way that increasing all this traffic is going to make things worse. Okay? People, I don't know where they're coming from, if they're coming from Western Coventry, I know they're coming from Connecticut. I see a lot of cars coming down Hockney Hill Road from Connecticut. There's also might be some coming down 117, and then they cut onto Hill Farm Road to get down to Route 3 also. So I think more of a traffic study has to be done and really seriously look at that traffic, different times of the days and different, weather conditions and stuff. But I really think a traffic study has to be done. Also, I'm a little worried about the second entrance and exit coming off of into the project, coming in and off of Hill Farm Road, Hockney Hill Road. There's not much room there. There's a little bit more of a buffer now that the Department of Transportation has increased. People are going to make a right-hand turn. They get into that lane and they turn. Before, one car going, you don't know if he's going right, if he left his blinker on. Now it's if you're in that lane, you're going to make that right-hand turn. If there's an entrance coming up just a little bit further up on the road, okay, that's going to increase the traffic. People are going to be shooting out of there onto Hockney Hill Road. There's no light or anything. So I suggest that they maybe do another traffic study there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom, raise their hand. You bring them in, Cody. You lower your hand. John Chamberlain, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Name and address, please.
John Chamberlain, 8 Plumtree Lane, Coventry. My question or comment is that one of the first people that spoke from the audience talked about the need to be putting another business into this development instead of just having it all residential. The point was a very valid one because we have so much vacant places that businesses could go. It's difficult to understand the compelling need to build another one. I fear it's because this project needs the revenue, the potential revenue of that to be viable. But that was never explained why there has to be business on this property.
Anything else, Mr. Chamberlain? They are addressing the general business zone on this plan. That's why they have some commercial. And as far as the vacant buildings I'm hearing about, there's be a lot of reasons why they're vacant. Maybe they need a lot of work. I know there's a lot of rundown buildings in the town that are not rented, but all the new units that are coming available are rented.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else on Zoom? Raise your hand. Anybody else in the audience? Okay, I'll make a motion to close public hearing. Can I close public hearing first?
I think it's important that we, what I just go over stipulations like it's over.
We can go over stipulate that.
Okay, and I just want to add one thing, that the very generous, 40-foot, no clear buffer. There will be some clearing, because I believe you do have 80 feet, so I don't want there to be, Mr. Revens brought it up, I don't want there to be an uproar when you might be taking down some of that buffer, because I believe there's 80 feet existing now from property line to the field. So I don't want there to be misconception, when you start with your machines possibly removing some of that vegetation, leaving the 40-foot and then the 60 to the house. That's all. Okay, thank you.
You want to come up, Mr. Revens?
Permanent no-cut buffer is a permanent no-cut buffer.
Of the 40-foot.
I didn't know it wasn't on, I'm sorry. Oh. A permanent no-cut buffer is a permanent no-cut buffer. It doesn't mean you come through the buffer and tear everything down. That's not what this is, and that's not what was represented. So
Agreed.
whatever the access is to the site for site work, excavation, water, sewer, utilities, foundations, driveways, sidewalks, patios, decks, and everything else, that's all done from some direction other than through the buffer.
Right.
And that's what's in the stipulations, and that's what we thought, based on the staff report and based on the applicant's submission, is what we were voting on. So I want to make it as clear as I can. that
it's a
our
no cut?
support is based on it's no cut from now until the end of time.
40 feet is no cut.
Correct, from now until the
And,
end
and
of time.
we will talk about this at preliminary also.
Yes, sir, we will, but I just
Mr.
wanted
Chair.
to make sure that that's what it means.
Mr. Reynolds, what Mr. Anderson was saying is that if there's 40-foot no-cut buffer to the existing residence property line, and say there's an additional 40 feet, so there's actually 80 feet, 40 feet will be cleared, but the 40 feet from the residence out is not going to be touched if they need to clear it. But the 40 feet buffer will not be touched at all.
Well, if that's what he said, I misunderstood him because
that's what he
we
said.
all know
Yeah.
we all know you got to clear sites in order to
Yeah.
build.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
that's,
sorry, I misunderstood what he said.
So when digging starts, then I don't want any uproar knowing that he said no clearing, but the perception of no clearing, but I believe he will have to remove some of that buffer as part of his plan to maintain the 40 feet.
Not the buffer. He's going to have to remove some trees and leave 40
So
feet.
not the buffer.
Not,
Sorry.
yeah, not the buffer. When he said buffer, that's why I got up. That's why I got up.
That exists now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Come on up.
Judy Quinlan, 22 Wood Cove Drive, Coventry. If there is no buffer, it's just grass up to the tree line of my property.
No, there'll be a 40-foot buffer.
Okay, but if there's no trees there now in that 40-foot,
We can add trees there.
okay, all right, thank you.
That's the next stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? One more time on Zoom. Anybody on Zoom? Put your hands up. Hey, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I'll make a motion. We close public
I have a
hearing.
motion by Mr.
I'll
Smith.
second it.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ray's. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Public hearing is closed. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna get ready to start in a few minutes. Revenue. And that's the revenue. It's a fucking road. Okay, we all set? Does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant before I ask for a motion? Go ahead, Rick.
I have a
Can
couple
you
of.
come on up, Mr. Landry? Thank you.
Just an observation in a nearby subdivision. Would the applicant object to no vinyl fencing along Route 3 or Hockney Hill Road like they have up at New London Avenue?
I'll ask that question. Mr. Kent, is there any objection to a condition against a white
Any
vinyl?
vinyl fence. In other words, I want either landscaping, cedar, or stone walls, as opposed to the vinyl fencing like is up at New. Okay.
Mr. Kent has indicated that that would be acceptable.
And we talked just for, again, I don't know how to, maybe we could just leave it alone, but I guess maybe there already was, as you mentioned, a suggested possible condition of approval for the commercial building not containing any of the following uses without support of sufficient impact analysis, traffic analysis at the preliminary plan stage. I'd like to add that there will also be sufficient protections in the condominium documents to ensure that the residential, something general that we can deal with later down the line. I mean, I just want to make sure, even if a restaurant, for example, or a fast food restaurant, you know, it may not have an issue with traffic or, and again, I don't know what an impact analysis was, but one of the comments that I made early on about the type of business I would like to see on that pad site, it would be something other than a restaurant, something other than grease buckets and dumpsters and that type of thing. Something more along the line of a bank or a medical facility. I don't want to be so restrictive because we'll let the market decide what would go there. And I'm sure Mr. Kent is more versed in renting out his properties than I am, but I just want to make sure there's sufficient protection so that the abutting 146 other condominium unit owners have some recourse through their association to enforce, you know, some kind of restrictions or regulations on just making sure there's an adequate buffer and that type of thing internal to that. I don't know how much regulation the town really can have if this is a private development condominium, so to speak. You follow me? And I don't know how I would word that, but I just wanted to see if we're kind of on the same page with that.
Yeah, I understand completely what you're suggesting, and we do know that these issues are not insulated from review at the preliminary plan stage. You know, whatever the commercial use is going to be is going to be reviewed for impacts. And so the internal impacts, I can assure you that Mr. Kent, the last thing he wants to do is to make it more difficult to sell 142 units. So the internal buffering will occur. And we probably will put in the condo documents that it'll be maintained by the condo association. So that
Okay,
was-
so I think we're on the same page. The way that this is worded is sufficient and the impact analysis could come in the form of a restriction in the condo documents at preliminary or later approval when
Yeah,
those
that's,
documents are
that,
developed.
that would be my expectation without that condition. So there's no objection to that. being
Okay.
Made more explicit.
Okay, so I'm on the record, you're on the record, and we'll deal with it later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just for clarification too, on the staff report, under proposed use, it has 146 unit residential development with commercial uses. That should be 142, just for the record. Okay, any further questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion. Just want to make sure that I get to the right spot in my notes over here and in planning director's report. I will put forth a motion to approve the master plan application of for the Coventry Crossings Mixed Use Development, which is a major land development comprehensive permit application. The owner, John Cosella, and the William Eccleston Revocable Trust and others, the applicant being Craig Management, the location being Harkney Hill Road and Nooseneck Hill Road, identified as Assessors Plat 10, Lot 29, Assessors Plat 18, Lot 86, Zone General Business 1, SPD and R20 for a total of 30.3 acres. It's currently vacant land. The proposed use is 142 unit residential development with a commercial use. The applicant proposes to build mixed use development comprised of 72 single family units and 35 duplex buildings for a total of an additional 70 units for 142 units total. There'll be one commercial pad site comprising approximately 12,500 square feet of gross area. Bear with me. Get the right page here. Of the 142 units, there will be a minimum of 25% of those units deemed affordable. The proposal for this is considered consistent with the Coventry Comprehensive Plan with regard to meeting the affordable housing needs as articulated in the plan and the location specific vision of this area of town. The proposal addresses the plan's need for affordable housing in both single-family units and two-family units and encourages housing that would be available for families and residents of all ages. The proposal addresses the plan's vision for specific area of town, specifically Nooseneck Hill Road and Hockney Hill Road, with substantial plans and information showing improvements in mitigation relating to buffering, access, landscaping, and signage. The proposed development is in compliance with the provision of the town zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations and/or where expressly varied or waived, local concerns that have been affected by the relief granted do not outweigh the state and local need for low and moderate income housing in town. The proposal is in compliance with the provisions of zoning where varied. The proposal has identified the waivers of relief appropriately. The relief does not outweigh the state and local need for affordable housing as articulated in state law and the Coventry Comprehensive Plan. All low and moderate income housing proposed are integrated throughout the development. They're compatible in scale and architectural style to the market rate units within the development and will be built and occupied prior to or simultaneously with the market rate units. All low and moderate income housing for this proposal will be integrated and compatible in scale and architectural style to the market rate units. There will be no significant environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions for approval. Based on the current master plan, there are no anticipated negative environmental impacts from the proposal with engineering designs, details, and mitigations to be demonstrated prior to the final plan approval. There does not appear to be any significant negative impact on the health, welfare, and safety of current and future residents of the community, to include safe circulation of pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Provisions are made for emergency services, sewage disposal, potable water, adequate stormwater runoff, and the preservation of natural, historical, and cultural features of the community. The proposal appears to have addressed or will address at the preliminary plan stage all impacts relating to health, welfare, and safety of residents. The proposal will not be in conflict with the provisions for traffic, emergency services, sewage disposal, potable water, stormwater runoff, and the prevention of natural, historical, or cultural features of the community where applicable. All the proposed land developments and all subdivisions should have adequate and permanent physical access to a public street in accordance with the requirements of Rhode Island General Law 45-23-60, Section 5. The proposal will have adequate and permanent physical access as proposed to a public street on both Nooseneck Hill Road and Hockney Hill Road. The proposed development will not result in the creation of individual lots with any physical constraints to development that building on those lots in according to pertinent regulations and building standards would be impractical unless created only as a permanent open space or permanently reserved for a public purpose on the approved recorded plans. This proposal will not result in the creation of individual lots with any physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards. The staff has found that this proposal is consistent with the standards for required findings of fact set forth in Rhode Island General Law 4553-4, as well as with the Town of Coventry zoning ordinance and subdivision and land development regulations. They have recommended that the Planning Commission document this findings of fact and consider approving the Coventry Crossings Master Plan application. I would like to include the following conditions for approval. The 12,500 square foot commercial building shall not contain any of the following uses unless supported with sufficient impact analysis, including traffic analysis at the preliminary plan stage. That would be for a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, supermarket, convenience store, pharmacy or drugstore, marijuana dispensary, liquor store, coffee, or a donut shop. 2, detailed discussions with the Central Coventry Fire Department shall be made as soon as practical with regard to fire truck access and hydrant placement. Correspondence with the fire department shall be made part of the preliminary plan submission. A final approval letter from the Coventry Fire Marshal shall be obtained as a condition of final plan application submittal, indicating the Central Coventry Fire Department had adequacy to provide fire service at that location. 3, the applicant shall achieve approval from the town sewer committee for providing service through the Woodland Manor pump station to meet project demand. Any applicable reviews or approvals from the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission shall be addressed in the preliminary plan application. A lighting plan shall be included in the preliminary plan application submittal and shall include consideration for such requirement, including the type, wattage, installation, and related specification detail. In addition to the foregoing, the Planning Commission would also like to request reasonable documentation throughout the public meeting process, including but not limited to opinions of experts, credible evidence of application for necessary federal and state and local permits, and will take into account advice from other boards. With regard to fair share development fees, this board would like to reiterate that they are generally required at the time of an issuance of a building permit. However, this motion, the board does not object to the applicant seeking the approval from the town council for waiving those fees on the affordable units. And number 8 would be the one that I just mentioned, and that is that there will be no vinyl fencing. Any fencing along Hockney Hill Road and Route 3, Nooseneck Hill Road, will be either cedar wood fence, could be landscaping, stone wall, or any combination, but no vinyl fencing. I would also like to incorporate the planning director's report with the note that the proposed use is in fact for 142 units That's a correction on the first page, and any place in the report where it refers to rental units that should just, excuse me, rentals, it should be changed to units.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second. I have a motion by Mr. Clooney and I have a second by Mr. Smith. I'm gonna do a roll call. Mr. Kinney.
Approve.
Mr. Smith. Approve. Mr. Price.
No.
Mr. Burke.
Yay.
Mr. Ray's.
Yeah.
Mrs. Elderkin.
No.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Colonian.
Approve.
Chairman Flynn approves. We have 7 yeses and 2 nos. Motion carries. Just so everybody look at the website, the next stage will be preliminary plan. Thank you. Thanks. You have anything, director's report?
Nothing to report at this time.
Any public comment other than what's on the agenda? Anybody on Zoom, raise their hand. Nothing, Cody? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Alderkin. All those in favor? Aye. Adjourn. Thank you.